Monsieur Kylian, bienvenue à Madrid. Bienvenue à Madrid. On est vraiment très heureux de te voir arriver, de te voir jouer ici à Madrid. C'est formidable. On est vraiment très heureux, mais il faut d'abord parler de quelque chose. Il faut qu'on parle. On va le faire maintenant. Alors allons-y. Mais merci Kylian. Bienvenue. Uh, Everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thank you guys for joining me again. Listen, we had to say goodbye to Tony in German, so I thought it'd be nice to say welcome to Kylian in French, the polite thing to do. But listen, I waited a little bit for the dust to settle. You know, in terms of, you know, when the announcement was made, there was sort of billions of YouTube, you know, everybody talking about, but there was really, I didn't want to come at it from the angle of just announcing something we already knew was going to happen, and we discussed on this channel many, many times. What I do want to do today is give you guys just a bit of a glimpse of kind of how his arrival is perceived by sort of diehard socios, you know, especially the older generation. And I want to give you guys kind of that perspective. And then I want to talk about, you know, Kylian's response to this pressure. I think he's very aware of this stuff. And then finally, I want to talk about the sporting aspect, what I think, you know, the formations could look like next year, you know, with his arrival. So listen, an incredible thing. I mean, this lineup is insane. But let me give you my thoughts and my perspective on all of this. Thanks for joining me. Let's get started. Right, my beloved Madridistas everywhere. All right, let's talk about, you know, kind of the Kylian move, you know, from a different perspective. You know, I did a video in the early days of this channel about 3 months ago or so, you know, talking about sort of, you know, when the speculation was getting really heated. This is the video, by the way. You guys can watch it. A lot of that stuff I think is still interesting. But part of what I wanted to discuss there was, you know, sort of the mood in Madrid with regard to the whole Kylian Mbappe situation. And, you know, what I explained in the video is that, you know, because we had made, I think, 3 separate attempts to bring Kylian, and the one a couple of years ago really, I think, offended Madridistas, you know, very profoundly. I mean, he had given his word, you know, verbal agreement to Florentino Perez that he would come, and you know, he was under an incredible amount of pressure at the end, and I understand that for, you know, a young kid, you know, it's a lot of pressure, and, you know, the Emir of Qatar intervening, the President Macron, and I mean, and of course all the money they threw at him, and you know, he caved in the last minute for reasons that I understand, that we understand, but nonetheless, it was something that I think did bother us. I mean, it bothered us, but, you know, we took that, you know, very much as an offense. You know, Spaniards are very old school, very much into sort of taking pride in your word and things like that. And, you know, for him to have sort of given us, you know, the verbal yes and then kind of backing out in the last minute was something that offended a lot of people here. And, you know, believe it, I mean, it's, you know, it's starting to dissipate and there's a lot of excitement, but I mean, it still is something that lingers. You know, there's a small odor of this in the air still. So, you know, I think that Kylian needs to understand that there's that issue coming into this, and that he's going to have to counteract. And I mentioned this in that video that I just mentioned to you guys. In order to counteract this sort of, you know, this feeling, he is going to have to be, you know, very humble, and he's going to have to understand that, you know, this club is bigger than him, and that, you know, he's going to have to sort of, you know, be very appreciative, very grateful. He's going to have to show a lot of respect for the shield, for el escudo, and a lot of appreciation for, you know, the Florentino Perez. He's going to have to kiss the ring. And so, you know, I think he's very, very aware of this, and I think it explains the words that you heard in his press conference for France the other day, because if you think about some of the key phrases that he used, I mean, he's very aware of what he has to do to repair this history that he has with Real Madrid. And, you know, he used very, I think, powerful phrases, and which I think show me that he's very aware of this. You know, he said things like, you know, this is, you know, the happiest moment of my career. This is the greatest club in the world. I'm going to come in with a lot of humility. I'm very grateful for everybody that helped with the transaction. I'll do everything I can to to help the club, and special thanks to Florentino Perez. So he really did go out of his way to try to correct this. I think he's very aware of it. So I think the general perception in Madrid, and I can tell you, we're excited because he's a phenomenal player. I mean, Vini right now I think is sort of in the best form in the world. But Kylian, I think in raw terms, you could argue is the best player in the world. He's phenomenal. So we are very excited, but we still have this little thorn in our side, and I think Kylian knows that he has to pull it out before we truly love him the way we love the other guys. So now as a sort of side note, you guys, if you heard the full Mbappe press conference, it was kind of heartbreaking because he said he didn't want to talk about anything other than the French national team, but when he was given opportunities, he really ran with it. I think the experience that at PSG, a club that he was very faithful to, but I think they made it really difficult for him, and there were a lot of veiled sort of little digs at Al Khalifi because he made it very clear that if it weren't for Campos and Luis Enrique, he wouldn't have played, that they threatened him very aggressively, that if he didn't renew a new contract, that he wouldn't play at all. And he said that they spoke to him violently, very aggressively. I mean, I think that the kid was under incredible amounts of pressure, and I really feel for him because it must have been very, very difficult. And you can sense the relief in his voice to sort of be out of this, golden cage. But just another little side comment I want to make. I mean, there's some, commentators. I was listening to Sky Sports the other day, and, there's a commentator saying, well, you can understand PSG's reaction because they pay, that people at PSG would be upset because they paid him all this money and now he's leaving for free and PSG is not going to get any money from Real Madrid with Kylian. And I completely disagree with this notion. I mean, a contract is a contract. I mean, PSG offered him a 2-year contract with an option for a 3rd year. This was what they offered him, and they're the ones that put the money on that piece of paper. So Kylian wasn't the one. I mean, they offered it to him, and he accepted it. And then when he exercises the terms of that contract, somehow you get upset with him. So, Kylian had a right to leave after year 2, and he did so. And he does so as a free agent. I mean. And to now be upset that PSG isn't getting any money when he's a free agent, well, you should have accepted the money that Real Madrid offered 2 years ago, because it was something to the tune of, all in, it was about 220 million euros. We were throwing the kitchen sink at this. We were throwing everything at this. And they didn't want to accept it. They didn't even return our phone call. And now, when he leaves as a free agent, now you're upset? So, look, this is... I'm very sorry, but I don't believe that narrative. I don't think PSG has any right to feel upset at all. He played for you. He did his best for you under the contract terms that you gave him. So, crying about it now, you should have thought of that when you offered him the contract with the stipulations that were in that contract. Anyway, okay, so that's the situation. I think Kylian knows that he needs to, really say the right things and act the right way in order to truly win our hearts. I mean, we're excited about his arrival, but, he still needs to get this thorn out of our side. Okay, let's talk about the sporting aspect of this. Look, the lineup is incredible. It's going to be amazing. But look, think about it from Kylian's perspective. I mean, you are coming into a squad that, first of all, is ridiculously young. I mean, ridiculously young. And they have already won the league, weeks in advance, with ease, and has won 2 out of the 3 last Champions Leagues. I mean, the balance of power in terms of, who needs to please who has really changed here. And I think Kylian knows he needs to come in here and he has to prove himself from day one. He has to play to the death, and he has to prove himself from the first minute, because he is walking into an extraordinary team that has accomplished absolutely everything. And I think he also needs to be aware that he cannot rattle the chemistry. There's an incredibly good vibe in this club. Everybody gets along, the youngs, the veterans, even players that compete for the same position and for minutes, that everybody gets along. And I think he needs to know that he's cannot disturb that chemistry, and I think he's aware of it by the stuff he's saying. But anyway, so in terms of the formations, listen, I mean, I think we all agree that the most likely, you never know what Ancelotti can drum up. I mean, but I think that the most likely formations would be this 4-3-3, okay, which a kind of a 4-3-3 where you have Carvajal. You've got, Rudiger and Militao if he recovers. Obviously, we expect him to be in full swing by next season as center backs. And then you're going to have Mendy on the left. This is sort of one potential sort of ideal lineup. Now, just in front of them in a kind of pivot position, you could have either Camavinga or Tchouaméni. I think they both play that role very, very well. On the right, you would have Valverde. Although if he's injured, you could have Brahim or out of that play that position. And then on the left, you'd have Bellingham. And then up front, you would just have so much firepower. It's ridiculous. I think you'd have Vini on the left, Mbappe in the middle, because Mbappe has spent more time as a number 9 than Vini. They will be swapping a lot. So just because Vini starts on the left doesn't mean they're not going to be alternating throughout the entire match. And then on the right, you're going to have Rodrigo. But, obviously, you can also play Brahim or Arda Güler in that position. So the 4-3-3, I think, is probably the most offensive solution, the most attacking-minded solution. But you could also, play a 4-4-2, which would look, in the back would look the same. You'd have kind of a double pivot with Camavinga and Tchouaméni, and then you would sort of push Bellingham off to the left, and Valverde to the right, again with Brahim and Arda Güler potentially as covering that position as well. And then up front, just have Vini and Mbappe and Kylian, but sort of alternating, as well. They're going to have to learn to cover more space. So these are, I think, kind of the more obvious formations, but it's a ridiculous lineup. It's just extraordinary. And we've got Enric coming as well. And we have so much talent on the bench. It's just absolutely frightening. So this is where I see it now. I'm not including Alphonso Davies because, that seems to have gone a bit quiet in the last couple of weeks. But anyway, this is what I think it feels like. We're incredibly excited. We know it's going to be unbelievable, and our rivals are just, scared to death. But, we do have this issue that, we want the positive of Kylian. We don't want anything negative coming from this, and he needs to convince us that he's going to feel this shirt and this club as strongly as everybody else does. So, listen, that's kind of the perspective from here. I wanted to share my thoughts with you guys, after the dust settled. I hope you enjoyed it, and as always, thanks for the likes, the subscribes, and the comments. And I'll see you guys in the next video. And as always, a la Madrid.